Hey, everybody. Get ready, because I'm about to tell you a super fun story that starts on a bright, sunny afternoon. I live in a little house on Maple Street, and my name's Jake. I'm just a normal guy who likes simple things. I love two big things in my life, my dog Max and having some quiet time to relax. Max is my best buddy. He's a big, silly golden retriever with fluffy fur and a super loud bark. When he barks, it's so loud it feels like the whole town can hear it. To me, that sound is awesome, like the best music ever. But some people in my new neighborhood, they didn't like it one bit. They called it a public nuisance, which is just a fancy way of saying it bugged them. See, I had just moved into this place not long ago. I thought it would be a fresh start, a happy new home for me and Max. I pictured sunny days, playing fetch in the yard, and chilling out with no worries. But oh boy, was I wrong. I didn't know it yet, but I had moved into a spot where some grumpy people loved making rules. These people were part of something called the HOA, short for Homeowners Association. They're like the bosses of the neighborhood, always carrying clipboards and telling everyone what to do. And guess what? They decided Max's barking was a big problem. It all started on that sunny day when I was outside with Max. He was running around, wagging his tail like crazy, and barking at a squirrel he saw in a tree. I was laughing because he's so goofy when he gets excited. To me, his bark is the happiest sound in the world. It's like he's saying, "Hey, Jake. Look at me. I'm having fun." I could listen to it all day and never get tired of it. But then, I saw someone watching us from across the street. It was a lady with a sour face, holding a clipboard. I didn't know it yet, but she was about to turn my quiet day into a big mess. Her name was Karen. Yep, that kind of Karen. She's the type of person who looks like she's mad at the world all the time. She marched over to my yard, her shoes clicking on the sidewalk, and stopped right in front of me. Max barked once at her, and she glared at him like he'd done something terrible. Then she looked at me and said, "Jake, your dog is too loud. It's against the rules." I blinked at her, confused. Rules? What rules? I'd only been here a few weeks. She held up her clipboard and pointed to a piece of paper. "The HOA says no loud noises. Your dog is a problem, and we're not happy." I tried to stay calm. "Max just barks because he's happy," I said with a smile. "He's not hurting anyone." But Karen didn't care. She shook her head and said, "Fix it, or you'll be in trouble." Then she turned around and walked away, leaving me standing there with Max, who was still wagging his tail like nothing happened. I scratched his head and thought, trouble? For barking? What kind of place is this? That's when I realized I wasn't just living in a neighborhood, I was living in a war zone. These HOA people were like rule-making robots, and they had their eyes on me and Max. Now, let me tell you a little more about Max. He's not just any dog. He's my best friend in the whole world. I got him when he was a tiny puppy, all fluffy and wiggly, with big brown eyes that made me laugh. He's been with me through everything, good days and bad days. When I'm sad, he puts his big head on my lap and looks at me like he's saying, "It's okay, Jake." When I'm happy, he runs around and barks to celebrate with me. His bark is loud, sure, but it's full of love. I couldn't imagine telling him to stop being himself. That's just not fair. But the HOA? They didn't see it that way. To them, Max was a noisy troublemaker, and I was the guy who let him get away with it. After Karen left, I sat on my porch and thought about what she'd said. Trouble? What kind of trouble? I didn't want to find out, but I had a feeling they weren't going to leave me alone. And I was right. Over the next few days, I started getting letters in my mailbox. They were from the HOA, and they all said the same thing: "Your dog barks too much. Stop it." One even said they could fine me, make me pay money if I didn't quiet Max down. I couldn't believe it. Pay money just because my dog was being a dog. That's when I started to get mad. I didn't move here to be bossed around by people with clipboards. I moved here to live my life and have fun with Max. But these HOA folks were acting like they owned me and my dog. It felt so unfair. I looked at Max, who was chewing on a stick in the yard, and said, "Buddy, we're not going to let them win, are we?" He barked once, like he was saying, "Nope," and I laughed. That's when I knew I had to do something. I wasn't sure what yet, but I wasn't going to let them silence my best buddy. So here's where you come in, friends. I've got a question for you to think about. What would you do if someone tried to stop your favorite pet from being themselves? Would you give up? Or would you fight back? Drop your ideas in the comments below, I really want to know. And if you're wondering what I did, well, you're in for a treat. This story's about to get wild, and I promise it's going to make you smile. Stick around, because me and Max, we were just getting started. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. If you like stories like this, fun ones with dogs, crazy neighbors, and a little bit of mischief, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it means you won't miss the next part of this adventure. Okay, ready? Let's keep going. The HOA thought they could scare me, but they had no idea what was coming their way. Max and I were about to turn this quiet neighborhood upside down. Okay, friends, here's where the story starts to heat up. The trouble all kicked off one day when Karen, yep, that Karen, came stomping over to my little house on Maple Street. You know the type of person I mean, right? The kind who always looks grumpy and loves telling people what to do. Well, that's Karen. She lives next door, and let me tell you, she's not the friendly welcome to the neighborhood kind of neighbor. Nope. She's the kind who watches everything you do with a frown on her face. And on this day, she was mad, really mad about my dog, Max. So, picture this, I'm just sitting on my porch, sipping some lemonade, and Max is in the yard, chasing his tail and barking at a butterfly. He's a big, goofy golden retriever, and his bark is loud, but it's happy. To me, it's like he's singing a little song about how much he loves life. I was smiling, enjoying the sunshine, when suddenly I hear this loud clomp 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 coming my way. I look up, and there's Karen, marching across the grass like she owns the whole street. She's holding a piece of paper in her hand, and she's waving it around like it's some super important letter from a king or something. Jake, she snapped, stopping right in front of me. Her voice was sharp, like a teacher yelling at a kid who forgot their homework. Your dog's barking is driving us crazy. I blinked at her, surprised. Max barked again, just once, because he saw her and got excited. Karen glared at him, then turned back to me. It's against the rules, Jake. Rule 47B, no excessive noise. She held up the paper and pointed at it, like I was supposed to read it right then and there. I peeked at it and saw a bunch of boring words typed out, but I didn't really care. Rules? What rules? I just wanted to enjoy my day with Max. I took a deep breath and tried to stay nice. Karen, I said, keeping my voice calm, Max only barks when he's happy. He's not hurting anybody. I even smiled a little, hoping she'd chill out. But oh no, Karen wasn't having it. She crossed her arms over her chest, tilted her head, and gave me the sneaky little smirk. Fix it, she said, all slow and mean, or we'll fine you $100 a day. $100? For a bark? My eyes got wide, and I felt my tummy twist. That's a lot of money. I could buy so many treats for Max with that. I wanted to yell back at her. I could feel my face getting hot, like when you're so mad you just want to stomp your feet. $100 every day just because Max was being a dog. That didn't sound fair at all. But I didn't say anything mean. I kept my cool, even though inside I was boiling like a pot of water on the stove. Karen stood there, smirking at me, thinking she'd won. She turned around and marched back to her house, her shoes making that clomp clomp sound again. I watched her go, and Max ran over to me, wagging his tail. He didn't know what was happening, but he licked my hand like he was saying, "It's okay, Jake." After she left, I sat there for a minute, thinking hard. Who was we? Oh, right, the HOA. That's the Homeowners Association, the group of bossy people who make rules for our neighborhood. Karen wasn't alone, she had a whole team of clipboard-carrying buddies who loved telling everyone how to live. They thought they could scare me with their silly rules and big fines. $100 a day? That's crazy. I wasn't rich. I couldn't pay that. And I wasn't about to tell Max to stop barking. He's my best friend, and barking is just what dogs do. It's like telling a bird not to fly or a kid not to laugh. It's nuts. The more I thought about it, the madder I got. I looked at Max, who was now chewing on a stick, and I said, "Buddy, They can't do this to us, can they? He tilted his head and barked once, like he was saying, nope. That made me smile, but I was still worried. What if they really tried to take my money? What if they kept bugging me every day? I didn't want to live like that, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for Karen and her friends to show up with more papers. It felt like they had me trapped, like a mouse in a cage. They thought they had me cornered, and I bet they were laughing about it over at Karen's house right then. But here's the thing they didn't know, I wasn't going to give up that easy. Nope, not me. I might look like just a regular guy, but I've got a tricky side. While I sat there on my porch, sipping my lemonade, my brain started spinning. I was already cooking up a plan, a super sneaky one they'd never see coming. Karen and her HOA buddies thought they were so smart with their rules and fines, but I was going to show them that I could be smarter. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let them win. Not today, not ever. The next day, things got even worse. I went to my mailbox to grab the mail, and guess what I found? A letter from the HOA. It was all typed out nice and neat, but the words were mean. It said, "Dear Jake, your dog's barking breaks Rule 47B. You must stop it, or you will pay a fine of $100 per day, starting tomorrow." My hands shook a little as I read it. Tomorrow. That was so soon. I looked over at Max, who was digging a hole in the yard, and my heart felt heavy. They weren't kidding around. They really wanted to take my money just because Max was being Max. I went back inside and sat on my couch, the letter in my hand. I read it again, and every time I did, I got madder. Who did these people think they were? They didn't even know me. I'd only been here a few weeks, and already they were acting like I was some big troublemaker. All I wanted was to live in peace with my dog, but they were turning it into a fight. And Karen? I could just picture her sitting at home, smiling that sneaky smile, thinking she'd scared me good. Well, she was wrong. I wasn't scared, I was fired up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Max and how happy he makes me. I thought about how he barks when I come home from the store, like he's saying, "Yay, you're back." I thought about how he barks at squirrels and birds, just having fun. That's not a public nuisance, that's a dog being a dog. The HOA didn't care about that, though. They just wanted everything quiet and boring. Well, I wasn't boring, and neither was Max. We were a team, and we weren't going to let some grumpy neighbors push us around. The next morning, I saw Karen again. She was standing by her fence, watching me and Max with her arms crossed. Max barked at a bird, and she wrote something down on her clipboard. I waved at her and smiled, acting all friendly, but inside I was planning. She didn't know it yet, but every time she glared at us, every time she wrote something down, she was making me more determined. I wasn't going to fix Max. I was going to fix them. My plan was still fuzzy, like a puzzle with missing pieces, but it was coming together. I just needed a little more time to figure it out. So, there I was, stuck in this mess with Karen and the HOA. They thought they had all the power with their rules and fines, but I had something they didn't expect, a big idea brewing in my head. They wanted to silence my best buddy, but I was going to turn their silly game upside down. How? Oh, you'll see soon enough. Stick with me, because this story's about to get even wilder. Karen and her clipboard crew had no clue what was coming, and that's what made it so fun. Okay, friends, let's keep this story rolling. Things were about to get even crazier at my little house on Maple Street. For the next few weeks after Karen's big visit, the HOA, the bossy neighborhood rule makers, turned into my personal nightmare. It was like they decided I was their number one enemy, all because of my dog Max and his happy barks. Every day felt like a new battle, and I was starting to wonder if moving here was a giant mistake. But I wasn't going to give up, not me, and not Max either. Stick with me, because this part's where I started to figure things out, little by little. First, let's talk about those letters. Oh boy, they kept coming. Every time I checked my mailbox, there was another one waiting for me. They weren't nice notes like, "Hey, Jake, hope you're having a good day." Nope, these were mean, grumpy letters from the HOA. They'd stack up like a big pile of homework you don't want to do. Each one was angrier than the last. "Cease the barking," they'd say in big, bold letters. "Cease. That's just a fancy word for stop. They wanted Max to stop barking, like he was some kind of noisy monster. One letter even said, "You have 24 hours to make your dog be quiet, or else." Or else what? More fines. I rolled my eyes and tossed the letters on my kitchen table. Max didn't know about any of this, of course. He was too busy being his goofy self. He'd run around the yard, chasing squirrels or sniffing flowers, and every now and then, he'd let out a big woof. It wasn't loud to me, it was just Max saying, "Hey, world, I'm here." But to the HOA, it was like he was yelling through a megaphone. I'd sit on my porch and watch him, smiling because he's the best dog ever. But then I'd see those letters on the table, and my smile would fade. How was I supposed to stop Max from being Max? I couldn't. And I didn't want to. Then there was Karen. Oh, Karen. She made everything worse. I caught her spying on me one day, and it was so sneaky. I was in my backyard, throwing a ball for Max, when I looked up and saw her peeking over the fence. She had a little notebook in her hands, and every time Max barked woof, she'd scribble something down real fast. I waved at her and said, "Hi, Karen," just to be nice, but she didn't wave back. She just kept writing, her face all scrunched up like she'd eaten a sour lemon. I bet she was keeping a list of every single bark, like a detective in a movie. Max barked at 2:15, she'd write. Max barked at 2:16. It was ridiculous. I started noticing her more after that. She'd stand by her window, looking out at my house, or she'd walk by super slow with that notebook tucked under her arm. One time, I even saw her talking to another HOA person, a tall guy with glasses, right on my street. They were pointing at my yard and shaking their heads. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew it was about me and Max. It felt like they were ganging up on us, watching every move we made. My tummy felt all twisty every time I saw them. Were they going to knock on my door again? Were they going to send more letters? It was like living with a bunch of nosy teachers who never stopped giving you rules. But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let them win. Nope, not a chance. They could send all the letters they wanted and spy on me all day, but I wasn't going to bow down to their silly game. Max was my buddy, and I'd fight for him no matter what. Every time I saw Karen with her notebook or got another mean letter, it made me more stubborn. I'd look at Max and say, "We're tougher than they think, right?" He'd wag his tail and bark, like he was agreeing with me. That's when I knew I had to do something smart, something they wouldn't expect. One morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my coffee. The sun was shining through the window, and Max was snoozing on the floor next to me. I was staring at the pile of HOA letters, feeling a little grumpy myself. How could they be so mean about a dog? I took a big sip of my coffee, and then bam, it hit me. A light bulb moment. You know, like when a cartoon character gets a bright idea and a little light turns on over their head. That was me. I put my mug down and grinned. If they hated Max's barking so much, I'd give them something even louder. Something they couldn't stop. Something totally legal that would drive them nuts. I jumped up from my chair, so excited that I almost spilled my coffee. Max lifted his head and looked at me like, "What's going on, Jake?" I patted him and said, "Don't worry, buddy. I've got a plan." My heart was beating fast because I knew this was going to be good. I didn't have all the pieces yet, but I had the start of something tricky and fun. I needed to find a way to fight back that wouldn't break any of their dumb rules. And then I thought, what's louder than a bark? What's something they can't find me for? That's when the idea started to grow, like a tiny seed turning into a big flower. I grabbed my car keys and told Max, "I'll be right back." He wagged his tail as I ran out the door. I drove straight to the pet store down the road, my brain buzzing with excitement. When I walked in, I wasn't sure what I was looking for yet, but I knew I'd find it. The store was full of fun stuff: fish swimming in tanks, bunnies hopping in cages, and birds chirping everywhere. I wandered around, looking at all the animals, until I stopped in front of a big cage with a bright green bird inside. Her name tag said Polly, and she wasn't just any bird. She was a parrot, a super special one. The pet store lady came over and said, "That's Polly. She's really smart. She can talk, sing, and copy anything she hears." My eyes got wide. Talk. Sing. Copy. Oh, This was perfect. I watched Polly tilt her head and squawk, "Hello, hello," in a funny voice. I laughed out loud, and the lady smiled. "She's one of a kind," she said. I leaned closer to the cage, and Polly looked right at me. Then she barked woof woof, just like Max. I couldn't believe it. This bird could mimic anything. I knew right then and there that Polly was coming home with me. I grinned so big my cheeks hurt. "I'll take her," I told the lady. She helped me get a cage and some bird food, and soon I was driving back home with Polly in the front seat. She kept squawking the whole way, "Hello. Woof woof. Bye bye." And I was cracking up. This was it. This was my big plan starting to come together. If the HOA hated Max's barking, they were going to lose their minds over Polly. A talking, singing, barking parrot? Oh, this was going to be good, really, really good. When I got home, I set Polly's cage on the kitchen table and let Max sniff it. He wagged his tail, and Polly barked at him. Max barked back, and I laughed so hard I almost fell over. They were already a team. I sat down and watched them, feeling proud. The HOA thought they could boss me around, but they didn't know what was coming. Every mean letter, every sneaky spy moment from Karen, it was all leading up to this. I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I was going to fight back with something loud, funny, and totally allowed. So, there I was, with Max and Polly by my side, ready to shake things up. The HOA had no idea what I was planning, and that made it even better. Little by little, I was figuring out how to turn their rules against them. What would happen next? Oh, you'll love it, I promise. Keep sticking with me, because this story's about to get loud and wild. Alright, friends, here we go. This is the part you've been waiting for. The next morning after I got Polly, my super smart parrot, I was ready to have some fun. I woke up early, the sun just peeking over the trees, and I had a big grin on my face. My plan was ready, and it was going to be awesome. I grabbed Polly's cage, carried it outside, and set it right on my front porch. I put it in the perfect spot close enough to Karen's house so she'd hear everything loud and clear. Oh, this was going to be so good. Max, my goofy golden retriever, trotted out with me, wagging his tail like he knew something fun was about to happen. I stood there for a second, looking around the quiet street. Everything was calm, no Karen, no HOA people, just me, Max, and Polly. I took a deep breath and thought, here we go. Then Max barked just one little woof. Because he saw a bird fly by. That was all it took. Polly heard it, and bam, she went off like a firecracker popping in the sky. "Hello, Karen," she squawked, her voice so loud it bounced off the houses and echoed down the whole street. I jumped a little because I didn't expect her to be that loud, but then I started laughing. This was perfect. Polly didn't stop there. Oh no, she was just getting started. She copied Max's bark, woof woof woof, and it sounded so real, like there were two dogs out there. Then she added her own silly words. "Shut up, HOA," she screeched, flapping her wings in her cage. "Rules stink." I couldn't believe it. She was saying exactly what I'd been thinking all along. I'd taught her a few things the night before, just for fun, but she was putting on a show now. Her voice was sharp and funny, and it carried all the way across the neighborhood. I peeked out my window, hiding a little so no one would see me giggling like crazy. That's when I saw Karen. She was standing in her yard, still in her pajamas, with her mouth wide open like she'd just seen a ghost. Her jaw dropped so low I thought it might hit the ground. She looked confused, then mad, then confused again. Polly kept going, "Hello, Karen. Woof woof. Find me now." And Karen's face turned redder and redder. I had to cover my mouth to stop laughing out loud. Neighbors started poking their heads out of their houses, too. Old Mr. Jenkins from across the street opened his door and squinted at my porch. Mrs. Lopez down the road leaned out her window, smiling big. Pretty soon, people were laughing, pointing at Polly, and whispering to each other. Polly was like a little green rock star. She flapped her wings and bobbed her head, squawking more stuff I'd taught her. "Noisy? Who, me?" she yelled. "Bark if you're free." Max barked again, and Polly copied him right away, woof woof, like they were singing a duet. The street wasn't quiet anymore, it was alive with noise and giggles. I watched from my window, feeling so proud. Karen wanted Max to stop barking? Well, now she had a talking bird to deal with. I bet she didn't see that coming. Then the HOA crew showed up. Oh boy, here came the big moment. I saw them walking down the street, Karen, the tall guy with glasses, and a lady with a clipboard. They looked like a grumpy little army, all red-faced and fuming. Their cheeks were pink, and their eyes were squinted, like they were super mad. Karen was leading the way, pointing at my porch and saying stuff I couldn't hear over Polly's noise. Hello, Karen. Polly squawked again, and the tall guy tripped a little, he was so surprised. The lady with the clipboard dropped her pen, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. They stopped right in front of my house, staring at Polly like she was from outer space. I decided it was time to step out. I opened my door, leaned against it with my arms crossed, and smiled real big. Hey, guys. I said, acting all calm like nothing weird was happening. Problem solved, right? Max isn't barking anymore. Polly screeched, rules stink, right after I said that, and the neighbors laughed even harder. Karen's face went from red to purple. She looked like she might explode. The tall guy adjusted his glasses and said, what is that? He pointed at Polly, who answered for me hello. Woof woof. I shrugged and said, that's Polly, my new pet. She's just saying hi. The lady with the clipboard flipped through her papers real fast, her hands shaking a little. This isn't in the rules, she said, her voice all squeaky. There's nothing about parrots. I nodded and kept smiling. Exactly, I said. You told me to stop Max's barking. So I did. Now it's just Polly talking. That's not against Rule 47B, is it? They all went quiet. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, like a fish out of water. The tall guy rubbed his head, and the clipboard lady kept looking at her papers, trying to find anything to say. But they couldn't. I'd checked the rules myself the night before, and guess what? Not a single word about parrots. Here's the kicker, friends, their own rules didn't say a thing about birds. They were all about no excessive noise from dogs and stuff like that, but Polly? She was a parrot, not a dog. She could talk and squawk all she wanted, and they couldn't find me for it. I'd found the perfect way to fight back something loud, something funny, and something totally legal. They thought they had me trapped with their fines and letters, but I turned it all around on them. Max wasn't barking anymore, Polly was doing the noise making now, and there was nothing they could do about it. Karen finally found her voice. This is ridiculous, she yelled, stomping her foot. You can't just, but Polly cut her off. Shut up, Hoa, she screeched, and the neighbors burst out laughing again. Mr. Jenkins clapped his hands, and Mrs. Lopez cheered, Go, Polly. Karen spun around, glaring at everyone, but it didn't matter. The HOA crew was stuck. They stood there, looking at each other, then at me, then at Polly. I just leaned against my door, cool as could be, and said, anything else you need? Or are we good now? They didn't know what to say. They were speechless, like when you get caught doing something silly and don't have an excuse. Polly kept going, fine me now? Woof woof. And the crowd got bigger. Kids ran out of their houses, giggling and pointing at the funny green bird. Even a little dog from down the street barked, and Polly barked right back. It was chaos, but the best kind of chaos. The HOA people whispered to each other, shaking their heads, and then they started walking away. Karen looked back at me one last time, her eyes all squinty and mad, but I just waved and smiled. Have a nice day. I called out. I watched them go, feeling like I'd just won a big game. My heart was pounding, but I was so happy. Max sat next to me, wagging his tail, and Polly squawked, Bye-bye, Karen, as the HOA crew disappeared around the corner. The neighbors were still laughing, some of them giving me thumbs up. I turned to Max and said, We did it, buddy. He barked once quietly this time and I patted his head. Then I looked at Polly and said, You're the real star here. She bobbed her head like she knew it. This was it, the big reveal. I'd taken their silly rule and flipped it upside down. They wanted Max to stop barking? Fine. Now they had a talking parrot instead, and they couldn't stop her. It was the perfect payback, and the best part? I was just getting started. The HOA thought they could boss me around, but I showed them I was smarter than that. The street was buzzing with excitement, and I knew this wasn't the end. Oh no, I had more tricks up my sleeve, and I couldn't wait to see what happened next. So, what do you think, friends? Pretty wild, right? Polly was my secret weapon, and she blew them away. Stick around, because this story's not over yet. The HOA might be mad, but I was ready for anything they threw at me next. Okay, friends, we're at the happy ending now. After that crazy morning with Polly squawking and the HOA crew standing there all confused, things started to change fast. Let's dive in and see how it all wrapped up. So, after Polly put on her big show yelling hello, Karen, and shut up, HOA. The HOA backed off quick. I mean really quick. It was like they'd been hit by a big wave and didn't know what to do next. No more mean letters showed up in my mailbox. No more grumpy visits from Karen or her clipboard buddies. They just stopped. I think they finally figured out they couldn't win this fight. Polly had surprised them, and I'd turned their own rules against them. It felt so good to see them give up. Polly. Oh, she became the neighborhood star. Everyone loved her. Kids would ride their bikes by my house just to hear her talk. Grown UPS walking their dogs would stop and laugh when she barked or said something funny. Even some of Karen's HOA friends, the ones who used to follow her around with their noses in the air, started sneaking over to my porch. They'd peek at Polly's cage, trying not to let Karen see them, and giggle when she squawked. I caught one guy, the tall one with glasses, smiling at her one day. She's pretty cool, he whispered before hurrying off. Yep, Polly was winning everybody over. I had so much fun with her, too. Every day, I'd teach her new lines, easy stuff she could copy. I'd say, "Hoa hoo," and she'd squawk it right back, "Hoa hoo." I'd laugh and give her a little piece of apple as a treat. Then I taught her, "Bark if you're free," and she'd yell it loud, flapping her wings. Max would bark along with her, like they were a team. It was the best. My porch turned into a happy, noisy place, and I loved it. The fines. They stopped completely. No more $100 a day threats. The HOA couldn't do anything about Polly, and they knew it. I'd beaten them at their own game. Max still barked a little, of course. He's a dog, he can't help it. But now, Polly took the spotlight. When Max went woof, Polly would copy him and add her own silly words. It was like she was the loudest one in the house now, and Max was cool with that. He'd just wag his tail and look at her, like he was proud of his new bird friend. I'd sit on my porch with them, sipping lemonade, and think, this is how it should be. No more worrying about mean rules or grumpy neighbors. Just me, Max, and Polly, having fun. Karen didn't give up right away, though. She tried one more time to fight back. A few days after Polly's big debut, there was an HOA meeting. I didn't go, I didn't want to sit in a room with all those clipboard people, but I heard about it from Mrs. Lopez, my nice neighbor down the street. She told me Karen stood up in front of everyone and complained. "That bird is too loud," Karen said, stomping her foot. "Jake's breaking the rules again." She waved her arms around, trying to get everyone mad like she was. I bet her face was all red and scrunchy, just like when Polly surprised her. But here's the best part, the other neighbors shut her down. Mrs. Lopez said they didn't even let Karen finish. Mr. Jenkins, the old guy from across the street, spoke up first. "It's just a bird, Karen," he said, rolling his eyes. Then Mrs. Lopez chimed in, "Yeah, she's funny. Lighten up." Even some of the HOA people nodded, like they were tired of Karen's whining. Everyone started talking at once, and Karen just stood there, looking mad but not saying anything else. Mrs. Lopez told me it was like the whole room turned against her. They didn't care about Polly, they liked her. Karen sat down, all huffy, and that was that. When I heard that story, I felt like jumping up and down. The neighbors were on my side now. They didn't see Polly as a problem, they saw her as a hero. And Max? They were cool with him, too. It was like the whole neighborhood decided to ignore the HOA silly rules and just enjoy the fun. I turned everything around. Their big plan to stop Max's barking didn't work. Instead, I gave them something louder and way cooler, and they couldn't do a thing about it. It was my victory, and it felt awesome. The very best moment came a few days later. I was outside with Max and Polly, tossing a ball for Max to chase. Polly was squawking, "Bark if you're free," like usual. I looked up and saw Karen walking by on the sidewalk. She had her head down, trying to pretend we weren't there. Max barked once, and Polly copied him, woof woof, then added, "Hoa hoo." Karen stopped walking for a second. She didn't look at me, but I heard her mutter under her breath, "I hate that parrot." Then she stomped away, her shoes going clomp clomp like always. I couldn't help it, I laughed out loud. Sweet, sweet justice. That muttering was like music to my ears. Karen, the queen of rules, the one who started all this trouble, was finally beaten. She didn't like Polly, but there was nothing she could do about it. She'd tried to boss me around, scare me with fines, and spy on me with her notebook, but I'd won. Me, Max, and Polly, we were the champs. The Hoa backed off, the neighbors loved us, and Karen had to deal with it. It was the perfect ending to all that mess. By the end, my little house on Maple Street felt like home again. No more nightmares about letters or fines, just sunny days with my best buddies. Polly kept the neighborhood lively, and Max kept being his happy, barky self. I'd taken their silly rule and turned it into something great. The best part? I showed them that you can't push people or dogs around just because you want to. We were free, and we were loud, and that was that. So, there you go, friends. Justice was served, and it tasted so sweet. Karen muttering, "I hate that parrot," as she stomped away. That was the cherry on top. What do you think? Pretty cool ending, right? I bet you're smiling just like I was. Alright, friends, we've made it to the end of this wild adventure. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did telling it. So, there you have it, a barking dog, a talking parrot, and an Hoa that finally learned they couldn't boss everyone around. It's been a crazy ride, hasn't it? Me, Jake, with my goofy dog Max and my loud parrot Polly, taking on Karen and her clipboard crew. We laughed, we cheered, and we showed them what happens when you mess with the wrong team. Now, let's sit back for a minute and think about what it all means. Grab a snack if you want. This is the part where we talk about the big stuff. This whole story started with something simple, Max barking because he's happy. That's it. Just a dog being a dog. But the Hoa, those grumpy rule makers, thought they could stop him. They sent letters, they threatened fines, and Karen even spied on us with her notebook. They wanted everything quiet and boring, like a library with no fun. At first, I was mad. Really mad. I didn't want to lose my money or tell Max to stop being himself. It felt so unfair, like they were picking on us just because they could. Have you ever felt that way? Like someone's being mean to you for no good reason? I bet you have. But here's what I learned, friends, sometimes, the loudest way to fight back isn't with yelling or getting angry. Nope. It's with a little creativity and a lot of guts. Think about it. I didn't shout at Karen or rip up her letters. I didn't stomp my feet or cry about it. Instead, I got sneaky. I found Polly, my talking parrot, and let her do the talking for me. She squawked and barked and made everyone laugh, and the Hoa couldn't do a thing about it. That's the trick, using your brain to find a smart way out. It's like when you're playing a game and you figure out a secret move to win. That's what I did, and it worked. Polly was my big idea, and she turned everything around. The Hoa backed off, the neighbors loved her, and even Karen had to admit she'd lost. It wasn't about fighting with fists or mean words, it was about being clever and brave. I had to take a chance, you know? Driving to the pet store, buying a parrot, teaching her funny things to say, that took guts. I wasn't sure it would work at first. What if Polly didn't talk? What if the Hoa found a new rule? But I tried anyway, and that's what made the difference. Sometimes you've got to be bold, even if you're a little scared. So, what about you? I want to hear your stories. Have you ever found a clever way to turn the tables on someone being unfair? Maybe a bully at school was picking on you, and you did something smart to make them stop. Or maybe a teacher gave you a rule you didn't like, and you figured out a fun way to get around it. Drop your ideas in the comments below, I'm dying to read them. Seriously, I bet you've got some awesome tales to share. We can all learn from each other, right? Tell me what you did, and let's cheer for each other. This whole thing with Max and Polly got me thinking about rules, too. Some rules are good, like don't run in the street or be nice to your friends. Those make sense. But some rules? They're just dumb. Like telling a dog not to bark or fining someone for having fun. Life's too short for that nonsense, don't you think? We should be able to laugh, play, and be ourselves without grumpy people stopping us. That's what I fought for, my right to live happy with Max and Polly. And guess what? You can fight for that, too. Think about your life for a second. Are there any dumb rules bugging you? Maybe at home, like no snacks before dinner, even when you're super hungry. Or at school, like no talking in the hall, when you just want to say hi to your buddy. What would you do about it? You don't have to get mad or break anything. You can be like me, find a tricky, fun way to fix it. Maybe you sneak a tiny snack when no one's looking, or you whisper to your friend super quiet. Be creative. That's the secret sauce, using your imagination to make things better. And here's another big thought: sometimes the people who seem quiet like me at first have the most power. Karen and the HOA thought I was just some regular guy who'd give up easy. They didn't expect me to fight back with a parrot. But I did, and I won. That's a cool lesson, right? You don't have to be the loudest or the toughest to make a difference. You just need a good idea and the courage to try it. So if you ever feel small or like no one's listening to you, remember this story. You've got power inside you, maybe even more than the big bossy people. I want you to feel strong after hearing this, friends. Life can throw silly stuff at you: mean neighbors, weird rules, people telling you what to do. But you don't have to sit there and take it. You can stand up, be bold, and find your own way to win. Maybe you won't get a parrot like I did. Polly's pretty special, but you've got your own tricks. What are they? Maybe you're great at making people laugh, or you're super good at drawing, or you know how to cheer up your friends. Use that. Make your world fun and fair, just like I did with Max and Polly. Hey, life's too short for dumb rules, right? That's my big message for you. Don't let anyone squash your happiness over something silly. If Max can bark, if Polly can squawk, then you can shine, too. Be loud about the stuff you love: your pets, your games, your favorite songs. Don't let the Karens of the world quiet you down. They might try, but they can't stop you if you're smart and brave. I bet you're already thinking of ways to be bold right now, aren't you? Good. That's the spirit. Before I go, let's do one more thing together. Picture this: you're on your own porch, like me, with your best buddy, maybe a pet, maybe a friend. The sun's shining, and someone's trying to boss you around with a dumb rule. What do you do? How do you fight back? Close your eyes for a second and imagine it. Got it? Now hold on to that idea, it's your power. You're the hero of your own story, just like I was in mine. And I can't wait to hear about it in the comments. So, that's it for now, friends. Thanks for sticking with me through this barking, squawking, rule-breaking tale. I hope it made you smile and maybe even cheer a little. Stay bold, stay loud, and don't let anyone dull your sparkle. I'll catch you in the next one. Maybe I'll have another crazy story to tell. Oh, and one last thing, if you loved this, hit that subscribe button so we can hang out again. Deal? Awesome. See you soon, and keep being your amazing self.